Hello everyone, I am Kitko and welcome to my final thoughts on the Zero Escape series. Before I even go into talking about anything, I just want to put a warning up that this will spoil the entirety of the Zero Escape series. So if you have not played the games yourself or watched my playthrough of it and you want to remain unspoiled, I recommend holding off on watching this video until you have completed the whole series. So how I want to do this video is I'm going to try and structure things so that I'm talking about 999 first, then VLR, and then Zero Time Dilemma, kind of as individual games. Trying not to compare them to the other games, even though that will probably happen anyway. And then after that, I'll kind of have a more overall discussion about all of the games together and my opinions on them in that way. So to kind of structure things, I'm going to talk about how I feel about the stories of each of the games, the gameplay, the visuals, and the characters. So to start off, we have 999. The story for 999 is actually like what really draws me towards it. I think it's just really great. For me personally, the whole idea of having a group of characters who are together in this kind of confined area, and having to work towards, escaping, and needing to interact with each other, especially under high stress conditions, is just, that is the kind of thing that I really, really like. So this kind of game is perfect for me. 999 has the 9 different characters. They're all trapped in this boat, quote unquote, that is sinking, and there's this person that they don't know named Zero who has kidnapped all of them and telling them that they have to, go through these doors and do these specific things in order to try and escape. So you go through, you solve puzzles, you interact with the different characters, you learn different things to kind of piece together what's going on. Over the course of the game, you kind of get to know that the characters themselves are not strangers as you're probably led to believe at the beginning. Everyone kind of has a different connection with each other, and they're all connected to a specific event, and yeah. I don't know how much I have to say about the story aside from the fact that it's amazing. I think it's one of the more solid stories that I've seen out of a game in quite a while. It just holds up really well. I know that in my playthrough of the game, I talked a little bit about there being some things that I felt were plot holes or, weren't quite explained properly or didn't quite make sense towards the end, but those things were very minor and some of them could be explained. So I think overall the story itself handles everything really well. Like, it presents you information in a way that, is very bite-sized, but can feel like they're not really giving you anything at first. Whenever I was playing through, I know that it felt like they were dumping a lot of random stories and information on me that didn't really have anything to do with what was happening, and it seemed really odd that the characters were just like, they would be panicking 1 second, and then the next they would be just like, I don't know, telling a story about the Titanic or something. And these weird, like, morphogenetic fields and all of this weird experimental stuff. But, you know, as you go along, you start to realize that the things that the characters are saying are actually relevant to the plot and the story of what is happening. While I felt that the story does kind of present itself as being something that is more based in reality and our world as we perceive it to be than what it ends up being. So it does kind of throw you off to be trying to like analyze things and like go into detective mode and figure out what's happening, only to have it be related to like, I don't even know what you would call it, like psychic related activity going on. But again, I do think that the story does try and move you towards that line of thinking through the different stories that the characters are telling. So if you are someone who is viewing it as a story that is strictly based in our reality and our understanding of the world and like fact, you're kind of pulled in a different direction and, well, pulled, more like guided in a different direction towards what the game is aiming towards. I find it especially interesting how the game presents different things because, I mean, you're playing as Junpei and you're going through different scenarios. You're not locked into one specific timeline. And I think how the game gives out information is really interesting. I believe I brought it up in my playthrough of 999, how it would be interesting to see how other people play this game because of how you can take in information in a very different way. It's not a completely linear story. While there may be a better route for people to take to kind of like get the information in a specific way, people are able to play however they want and they can get the story and the information in different ways depending on how they have chosen to play the game and the different choices that they make, which can be difficult, in making a game and telling a story. If people are taking in information in a different way each time, you need to make sure that they're getting information in a way that lends itself towards the kind of story that you're trying to tell. Like if one person plays the game and the pacing is really good and the storytelling is really good, but if they were to play it a different way, if the information they get is too jumbled or things don't quite make sense, if they were to play a specific way first, it makes it really hard to kind of juggle that. And I think that 999 did this really well. So yeah, the story, absolutely solid. I really enjoyed it. In terms of the gameplay, so I played the Steam version, and I know that this game did initially come out on the DS. And I think that you would almost need to have a hybrid of the two to get out all the problems that were present within the gameplay. And that's not to say that there were very many problems within the gameplay. With the DS version, from my understanding, the main problem was that the flowchart, I think, didn't exist. So you would have to like play through the game again in order to get all the different paths and stuff, and you wouldn't I guess, know what the paths are, which that sounds awful to me. But some of the things that the DS version did get right, because the game was specifically made for DS, were... I know in the Steam version there was the... what was it called? Like adventure mode and novel mode, where it would present text in two different ways. From my understanding, based on looking at some gameplay from the DS version, that whole thing is handled by having the adventure mode text being on the top screen and the kind of the novel text being towards the bottom. So you don't really miss out on things. Like if someone were to play the Steam version in adventure mode, they would actually miss out on details that is explained in the novel mode, which is what I almost ended up doing, and that would have taken away from the game for me. So, you know, that's one of the issues with gameplay for the Steam version and the version that I played. The DS also had an advantage of the DS being almost perfectly suited for the kind of story that is being told. So the whole premise behind 999 is that Junpei solving all of these puzzles, you also have a young version of Akane who's actually seeing Junpei do all these puzzles and figure things out, so that she is also able to figure things out in the time that she is in, because the two have a connection. I just forgot the name of it, but they have a connection that they're able to kind of like pass along information to each other. And so from what I saw for the DS version, it's supposed to be like the top screen of the DS is meant to be Junpei's perspective of things, and the bottom screen is meant to be Akane's perspective on things, like seeing what Junpei is seeing. So that I think is like really cool in terms of gameplay. Unfortunately, that doesn't lend itself as well to the Steam version, because you don't have the two screens on PC, unfortunately. So they weren't able to kind of have that really cool connection, but that, you know, that's to be expected with creating a game for a different platform when the initial platform that it was created for is very different and specific. that is what I would label the DS as. But also in terms of gameplay, you have the different puzzles that you're doing, and I think that 999's puzzles were a good balance of challenging and also attainable. That's not the correct word, but challenging, and also you can still do it without really having to look things up. If I were to be a child playing this game, I would probably have had more difficulty solving the puzzles, especially some of the ones that had to do with like math and stuff like that. But overall, I think that 999 presents and explains its puzzles well, without much issue. I said I'm going to try and not compare the games as much when talking about them individually, but out of all the games, I think that the puzzles in 999 were probably my favorite and the most straightforward, I guess, to get through. So I enjoyed them more. And I know that there were some differences between the DS version's puzzles and the PC's version's puzzles. The main one that I know is the final puzzle, which in the original DS version was a Sudoku puzzle. And I believe that you were able to see, like, utilize both screens. So you could flip the DS over to see, like, young Akane's perspective. My mind just blanked. Young Akane's perspective. And then you would see Junpei's perspective on the other screen. Which would absolutely not work on PC because you can't really easily flip a computer screen as you can a DS screen. I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't get to just do a Sudoku puzzle because I love Sudoku. But, you know, I think they did what they could with what they had for the PC version. And overall, I think all the puzzles were really solid, and I enjoyed them. Another piece of gameplay that I can discuss is the way that you actually move through the game. So I mentioned that the DS version didn't have a flowchart, which for me would have really negatively affected the gameplay. Because I probably wouldn't have even known that there are, like, multiple endings. Unless it might tell you at the end that you can, like, get different endings. But it's harder to tell if you don't specifically have a flowchart in front of you to see, like, what all you have to do. I liked being able to make different decisions and go through different paths and being able to see the different paths on the flowchart. I think that kind of gameplay is really cool. It's not even really gameplay. It's more so just like how the story itself is presented, in there being multiple paths that you can take and the choices that you make have an effect on things. I mean, in this game, it doesn't quite have an effect on things. You're still gonna get to the same point no matter which paths you take, but it feels like you're having an effect on things, and it does affect how you take in the story and how you experience the story. So, yeah. Again, I think 999 has another solid thing going for it in the gameplay. So now the next thing to talk about is the visuals. 999, I feel like, has the most traditional visual novel presentation in comparison to the other games. And honestly, I think that the visuals in 999 are some of the better in this series. Again, I'm not going to directly compare it to the other games because I'm trying to just focus on 999, but I personally really loved the art style of the characters. I liked that they had kind of 2D animations going for them in the different expressions that they make. I also liked the backgrounds and the art design there. I just think that the visuals of 999 really aided towards the story that it was trying to tell. They had a good style going for it, and it felt unique to the game, even though, like, there are other visual novels that exist out there that utilize similar styles, but within the series of Zero Escape, I feel like 999's visuals stand out the most as being just, I don't know, there's so much style and personality in the visuals for this game that I really very much enjoy. And I don't really know what else to say about the visuals other than just they're great. They're fantastic, and I love them. The next thing to talk about for 999 is the characters and my opinions on the characters. And what better way to accomplish that than a tier list. I figured that this would be a good way to visually present my feelings about the characters in comparison to each other. And also, I love making tier lists, so I'm just gonna do it as a tier list, and I'll talk about a little bit about each of the characters and how I feel about them. Now, it has been a while since I played 999, so my memory of all the characters isn't as, fresh as, say, like Zero Time Dilemma characters, but I will try my best to remember. I did watch a little bit of me talking about my feelings about 999 directly after playing, so that should help me a little bit. First of all, we have Junpei, the player character, the one that we are playing as. Junpei, I feel like, is such a solid main character and character that you play as. He has such a good personality. Like, it's very unique and fun and kind of relatable in comparison to a lot of other games that tend to like making the main character or the player character, the character that you play as, they tend to make them more like bland, I guess, in an attempt to make them be more relatable and for people to be able to like insert themselves into the position of that character. But I don't like that. I want characters to have a personality. I can't relate to the characters that don't have a personality and are trying to like be something that I can insert myself into their position. I can't. I like for characters to be able to stand on their own, even if they are the player character. So Junpei, I don't know. I really, really liked Junpei in 999, and I think he's an S tier character. I think he belongs there. I think he's just really great and really solid, and I love him. I don't know. Clover, so this is where things get difficult, because in my memory, the most recent version of Clover I know is the one from VLR. So I have to try and think specifically about the version of Clover that I know from 999. I feel like Clover was okay. There were times where I really enjoyed her, and there were times where I didn't really enjoy her. So I feel like she's kind of mid-tier for me. She would be a B tier. Do I have anything to say about Clover? I don't really know if I do. Yeah, I mean, she was just mid-tier, so I guess mid-tier is where I don't have a lot to say about a character. Like, they weren't so great that I have a lot of praises to throw at them, and they weren't so bad that I have a lot of, like, negative things to say about them. So yeah, I think B is a good place for Clover, for me, anyway. This dude, we don't even know him. He's D. Didn't really get a chance to know him, and the time that I did have to know him, he just was rude and blew up and was kind of dumb, honestly, for just believing things that people tell him. So yeah, he'll just be in D. I don't really care for him. I don't really know him. Who is he? Next is Akane, or June. Akane is a really interesting character. I know that whenever I played, she very much presents herself as, like, I don't know, the typical girly girl, has a crush on her friend and is being all flirty and stuff. I wasn't as much into that because I don't really care for that. the parts of Akane that were interesting to me were the parts that weren't actually displayed within the game. It was more so things that were hinted at, in that, you know, she is the one who's kind of behind all of this. She's the one who's planning this. So you know that she's a very intelligent character and a very structured and organized person to be able to put together something like this. She got out of the first game that she was a part of as a child, thanks to being able to tap into the future where Junpei solves all the puzzles and essentially saves the past version of her. And from that point, you know, she works towards putting together this game, because if she doesn't, then she technically doesn't escape and she dies. So those are the things that I find interesting about Akane. For how she's presented within the game, I don't have as many, like, I'm not as interested in her character. So this one's a little bit difficult to place. Honestly, I think I'm going to put her in B, just because throughout a lot of the game, I didn't really have a strong opinion of her, and my positive opinion of her is mostly things that I don't actually know for certain about her. So yeah, I think B tier for Akane for me is where she will live for now. Ace. How do I even feel about Ace? Ace was a character that he was there. I don't know. I think Ace as like a villain with motivations is very good. His motivations are kind of silly for why he wants to like why he set up the initial game that like Akane was a part of, and Santa and all the other children. His reason for that is because he has difficulty recognizing people's faces, and he wants to try and tap into like the morphogenetic field or whatever to try and fix that. I do not think that it justifies his actions at all. But you know, he at least had a decent motivation, and I believe that that would be his motivation. Like, him as a character just not being a great guy, I believe that he would do stuff like that to just simply try and recognize other people's faces. Throughout a lot of the game, I didn't really have like a strong liking or disliking towards Ace. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about him. I think I'm going to put him in B, because I think, like, I didn't feel overly positive about him, and I didn't feel overly negative about him. He's a good, villain for the story. And it's kind of an interesting thing that, like, he is the villain, because he set up the initial game thing that took place. Whereas Akane being Zero and setting up this game that they're all a part of now is actually just setting things up so that things happen according to, you know, I guess her memories and her recollection of how things happened, so that she lives and things turn out the way that they are supposed to. Next is Snake. I liked Snake. I really liked Snake, and I remember being super disappointed that he's like gone for a lot of the game. I really like his personality and how he talks and how he presents himself, and just, I don't know. he's just a really good character to me. He's the kind of character that I enjoy seeing. So, personal opinion, I love Snake. He's great. He's sassy. He is very loyal and will protect people and fight for them. He's just good. He's good. I like him. He's solid. I have nothing more to say. I don't know what else to add. I just really like him. Santa or Owie? Is that his name? I forgot. I'll just call him Santa. I actually really liked Santa as well. I don't know. He's a really interesting character to me. He's kind of dumb in a lot of the situations, but dumb in like a funny way. He, again, is another interesting character in a similar way to how Akane is interesting, but I feel like he presented himself in a way that reflected more on the points that I feel would make like Akane interesting that weren't as expanded upon. He ended up having a more direct hand in some of the scenarios, like towards the end where he like pulls out a gun and is like, do this and blah blah blah. I just feel like his personality shines through a little bit more. He has more of a very like, I don't know, just interesting personality to me. You can tell that he really cares about Akane and he actively, you know, will check on her whenever she would have any issues. And he has that whole moment where he's like staring at her picture and talking about, I actually don't quite remember what the conversation was. I think he was like comparing himself to actually Santa Claus and whether or not he's doing, you know, good or not good by the things he's doing. I think he doubts his own actions sometimes. I don't know. He talks a little bit more about things that I find to be interesting in terms of like a character and how they're thinking and how they're feeling than what Akane did. I feel like he had more freedom to do that because he wasn't tied to being like Junpei's crush, you know? Although that would be a very interesting version of the game. I would love it if he were Junpei's crush. Yeah, I think I might actually put him in S as well, just because I quite enjoyed him. I quite liked him. There's some things that were weird and frustrating about him, but I did really enjoy his character. Now, Lotus. Lotus was interesting. She annoyed me quite a few times. She was like I don't even know what to call it. Like the first thing that comes to mind is like the character that's there to be annoying. I don't know. Like, there were some good parts that you get from her, like, whenever she talked about, like, her daughters and stuff. Like, I enjoyed that side of her. But, there were other times where she was just, like, lazy or seemingly uncaring. I don't know. I think she is a C tier for me. Because she wasn't as bad as this dude, but she also wasn't as good as like these characters for me personally. And then we have Seven, another character whom I feel, is there gonna be any A character? I don't know. Another character that I feel like was decent. I know that he had some like, he made weird comments at some point. But overall, I feel like he was just, you know, fine. I didn't dislike him as much as I disliked the Lotus. I don't think I liked him any more than I liked Clover, Akane, or Ace. Do I have any words to say about him? I like that he ended up being like the detective type character, because it kind of like diverts your expectations, where like you see Ace, and with a name like Ace you're like, oh, he's like a detective kind of guy. But no, it's Seven. It's this guy. I don't know, he's decent. I don't think I have a whole lot to say about him, but I think he belongs in B for me. And yeah, there's no A characters. I don't know. I don't know. Santa could maybe be an A, but I don't know. I think he belongs in S for me. Yeah, these are my opinions on the 999 characters. They're just my opinions. They're just how I personally feel. You know, everyone has different viewpoints on characters and people, and it all comes down to perspective and what you like in characters and other people, like what characteristics and personalities you like. So, does this say anything about me? I don't know. I don't know. I like characters that have strong personalities, I guess. That's what I like. Yeah. So overall, 999 just completely solid, I think, in all regards. Like, I have some bad characters here, but they weren't enough to like drive down the game. Like this guy, literally, he's only down here because he survives for like 5 seconds. Like, he doesn't affect the game at all. And like Lotus doesn't bring down the game experience for me at all. So everyone is like very solid. Yeah, 999, solid story, solid gameplay, great visuals, good characters, a very good game, and I very much enjoyed it. It's probably on my list of like, if I were to make a list of like what my favorite games are, or games that I really enjoyed, or stories that I really enjoyed, 999 would be up there. And yeah, so that's my final thoughts on 999. And now we are moving on to Virtue's Last Reward, the second game. This one, there won't be a whole lot to talk about for the story. A lot of it is similar to how 999 is structured. You have a bunch of characters that are all trapped within the confines of wherever they are, and they're trying to figure out how to get out, and they're told that they have to do specific things in order to get out, and it involves solving puzzles. So a lot of it is very similar to how 999 is structured and how the story will play out, I guess. In this one, you're playing as Sigma, and I think a big difference in how the story is a bit different from 999 is that you as Sigma are moving through the game differently, I guess is how you would say it. Like for Junpei, the way that he's kind of experiencing things, I believe, at least is my interpretation, that the reason he knows things and you're able to see the different paths within 999 is because you're seeing like what young Akane is seeing, the like different possibilities of what could happen. In this one, you are jumping around. Essentially, you're jumping through the timeline. So literally you are the same person jumping all around. Yeah, so essentially introduces a different power that people possess. And in this one, as the story goes on, you slowly learn about the state of the world outside, in that there is this virus called Radical 6 that has been killing a ton of people. Society is not great. You learn about the different characters and how they're connected to everything that is happening and the events that are taking place, both for the game itself that is happening and for what is happening to the world outside. But overall, honestly, if you look at the story from a just very broad overhead perspective, a lot of it is similarly structured to how 999 is set up. And I would say that the biggest downside that VLR has is that it itself is not its own story. And like, that's fine. It's the second game in a series and there's a game after that. But the amount to which it is not its own story is kind of a lot. Like, it doesn't feel like it's complete. Like, if you were to play the game and experience the story would not feel complete at all. It feels a lot like it is a very long setup to the game that comes after it. I still enjoy the premise since it's the same as 999, and I already explained why I like the premise of 999 and kind of the area that everybody is in. I do also like the addition of the voting that happens now. I think it's a good way to get you as the player and also the characters to have this level of distrust of everyone. Because you're having to vote for people whether or not you want to ally or betray them. This is kind of getting into like the gameplay aspect, but it also factors into the story aspect as well, because the choices that you make affect the story and how it plays out and what pieces of the story you experience. And I do think that the voting in this game was a very good addition for a means of directing the story and branching the story in different ways. I think it works really well for that. And now, since I think the stuff that I'm talking about is kind of blending into gameplay, I'll focus a little bit more on the gameplay. So I was talking about the voting. You now have another aspect of the game, which is the Ambidex Voting, where you vote ally or betray against people. Very cool gameplay mechanic. I don't really know what to say about it aside from the fact that I like it, and I think it lends itself really well to the branching paths that these games have, because you make one choice, you get a different path. You make another choice, you get another path. So it just works really well for the game. And another aspect of gameplay that's also kind of story is how you are entering the rooms this time, the puzzle rooms. So in 999, you had to go by everyone's number on their bracelets and do like digital root stuff. So you had to do math to go through the doors. This time it's colors. So everyone has a different color. It will either be, God, I'm going to forget. I think it's red, green, blue, or cyan, yellow, or magenta. And this time you have people who are singles or pairs. So you're either paired with someone that you have to go through the door with, or you're on your own and you have to go with a group that is paired. which I think is a neat way to have it set up, because it kind of works in contrast to what the AB voting does, where the AB voting, it builds distrust among characters, and being paired with someone builds up a certain level of trust, I feel like. Even if you're paired with someone that you don't necessarily trust, you're still paired with them. It makes it feel like there's some sort of connection there between the characters, which I like. And then for gameplay, of course, we also have the puzzle rooms that you do, the little escape rooms. They're set up the same way that 999 is. You're stuck in a room. You have to find things to help you solve the puzzles in the room. You solve the puzzles, and then you escape. So the puzzles in VLR, I had heard ahead of time before playing it, were more difficult than 999. That did not quite prepare me for the type of difficult that they would be. This game does present you with the ability to change from hard mode and easy mode in the different puzzle rooms that you are in. So they did try and give you the option to have an easier time at the puzzles, which in theory is appreciated, but in practice I found that a lot of the times when I was stuck on puzzles, which was quite often I feel, switching to easy mode did not help. The hints that the characters would give me a lot of the time felt like things I already knew and were already obvious. I ended up having to look up things for this game and its puzzles multiple times because the puzzles themselves were difficult, but I feel like it was difficult in a not good way a lot of the times. There were some puzzles where I simply had a hard time because it was hard to figure out and it was difficult. And then there were other puzzles where it was difficult to complete and figure out because they either weren't explained properly or they were convoluted. This game, I felt like, tried to make the puzzles harder by explaining them weirdly a lot of the times. There were some that I really enjoyed, but a lot of the times when I would get stuck, it would just feel incredibly frustrating. 999, I believe I mentioned, felt like a good balance of challenging and, you know, completable, whereas VLR a lot of the times just felt like it was a challenge and frustrating. I do wish that the puzzles were a little bit better in this one. That doesn't necessarily mean that they had to make them easy. It more so means that maybe they needed to playtest them more, make them more clear, make them less convoluted in some cases. Because it is one thing to be stuck on a puzzle that you're simply having difficulty figuring out because it is hard, and it's another thing to be stuck on a puzzle because it was explained weirdly and you don't know what you're supposed to do. It just doesn't feel good, in my opinion. So yeah, I would not hold the puzzles in VLR to a higher standard than the puzzles in 999, unfortunately. Even though there were some pretty good ones in this one, the ones that were bad just ended up leaving a bad taste in my mouth. And going back to the fact that you can switch between hard and easy mode, There are also different files that you can receive depending on which mode you complete in the different puzzle rooms. So you'll get different files if you beat a room on easy, and you'll get different files if you beat a room on hard. In theory, I really like the idea of getting little pieces of information after completing the puzzles, and the amount of information you get depends on like the difficulty that you solve it in. In practice, I think they did this very wrong, and it was actually kind of detrimental to the gameplay. A lot of the files end up stating things that you don't know yet, and you're supposed to find out later. So the files will essentially spoil you on the game, which makes absolutely no sense. I do not know why they did that. I don't know why they did that. I feel like if they were going to give out additional information through these files that kind of like factor into the story and the gameplay, that they should have put a little bit more thought into when you receive certain things, so that you receive it after you have learned that information within the game, so that you don't literally spoil yourself on things that are gonna happen in the game. And I luckily realized this pretty early on, so I stopped reading the files. But it was confusing when I was reading them, because I would read information about things that the characters didn't know yet, and because I knew that, I would start to get confused as to what the characters knew and didn't know. I'd be like, why are you doing this? You, like, obviously this thing is a factor, but they don't even know that yet. I know that because I got the file. So yeah, in theory, a very good idea. In practice, they needed to do a little bit better with those files. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the visuals in Virtue's Last Reward. The main change in visuals being that they switched from 2D animated sprites to 3D models. I commend them for trying something new and trying to, I was going to say be innovative, but I don't know how innovative it really is to switch to 3D models. To me, I did not like them as much. They just didn't feel as unique and stylized, and there were some quirks with some of the 3D models. You had Clover, who was always smiling, which I don't know if that added to the game or took away from the game. Phi's eyes terrified me. I did not enjoy those. And I think the biggest disappointment in them switching to the 3D models is because they didn't utilize them in a way that would have actually aided them. Like, a lot of the times when they would use the 3D models, it was just in a similar way to how they would use the 2D sprites. Like, there's so much more that you're able to do with 3D models. Like, you can have more scenes. They had tiny little, like, clips of scenes that would play with 3D models. They could have had so much more of that, and it would have been really neat, and it would have added to the game. But instead, they just didn't. Maybe because they don't know how to use the 3D models as well, because they're new to them. But I just feel like the 3D models didn't really add anything to the game, and it, to me, kind of took away a bit of the charm that 999 had with the 2D sprites. And another aspect to the visuals is the scenery that they're in. The the scenery that they're in. My mind is literally blanking on the correct word, but the atmosphere of the game, where the characters currently are. They are in this sort of bunker shelter-like environment. So a lot of the rooms are very concrete and bland. I can right now only think of one room that actually was neat to be in and was cool to look at, and that was the garden. All the other rooms felt very, I said it already, bland. They felt bland because it was all just like concrete. And that was a very difficult thing to go from being in a setting that is, you know, a replica of the Titanic, which has amazing architecture elements to it and a very nice style, to just bland concrete bunker. Yeah, so the setting in Virtue's Last Reward was not as good for me. It certainly had its own atmosphere, but I personally enjoy things to have a little bit more going on for them. And I don't know how much more I have to say about the visuals. I feel like I'm just going to be repeating myself. Virtue's Last Reward was a step down in the visuals department for me from 999, unfortunately. I know that I said I don't want to compare them when talking about them, but it is so difficult to not do that. Yeah, so I guess now we're moving on to the characters. You know, even just looking at the things here, like, look at how much more personality and style the art for Virtue's Last Reward has than the, like, actual in-game style. Anyway, I'll stop talking about that. So first, we have Sigma, who we play as. I don't even know what I have to say about Sigma. He is definitely not Junpei's? He is definitely not Junpei levels of good as a protagonist. At least for me anyways. He had some questionable moments with perverted and horny comments that I did not like, and some of his conversations with Fi already made me uncomfortable, but now that I know what I do from playing Zero Time Dilemma, make me even more uncomfortable. I'm legitimately... Right now, let me talk you through what I'm thinking. For me, I think he is either B or C, and I don't know which. I don't know which. Do I not like him as much as I didn't like Lotus? Do I like him as much as these characters? You know what? I think he is B. He's not entirely bad, but he wasn't anything good for me either. And also the fact that he couldn't figure out that he was old, that still baffles me. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me. If you were suddenly in an old body, you would notice, especially given the fact that he had longer hair when he was old. He would see that hair in the corner of his eyes. And also, he was missing an eye. You would notice that if you ever touched your face. Yeah, I don't know. That's not necessarily a character thing from him. That's more of a weird writing thing that just doesn't work. But I'll bring it up now because I don't know when else to bring that up. I almost just called her Lotus. Lotus number 2, Alice. Somehow a worse Lotus. They always have to have scantily clad lady, and this time they were like, what if she just didn't even have a shirt? What if she just wore a necklace that somehow held up her boobs? I did not care for Alice. I don't remember feeling much sympathy or empathy for her. I remember there being a moment where she was like, I am awful, you should hate me, blah blah blah, and yeah. D. I don't know. I don't have much to say. I feel like she could have been cooler, but she wasn't for me, and that's kind of all I have to say about her. Clover. I don't know what happened to you, Clover. I guess Alice was a very bad influence on you, both for your clothing choices and for your personality growth. Clover somehow became more annoying and not good. I don't know if she's Alice levels of not good for me. You know what? This might be harsh, but I think I'm putting Clover in D. And some of that might be because Clover in 999, I felt like had room to grow and become a cool person and a cool character, and she just kind of, it disappointed me enough where she's heading that I am putting her in D. Plus, a lot of the things about her, she's supposed to be like this secret agent kind of person, and I just did not buy it. She just doesn't, I don't know. I feel bad for Clover. And where she went and where she ended up. Yeah, D for disappointment, I guess. In less bad news, Luna. I really enjoyed Luna. I liked her quite a lot, and I think the fact that she's a golem makes her even cooler, honestly. I enjoyed any of the time that I was around her. She was just a pleasant person to be near. She was very nice and kind. And I think she's just, like, written well. I think she's S for me, to be honest. I just really enjoy her. She's good. I like her. She's also cute. I like her. Do I have anything else to say about her? Yeah, I don't know. Her story is just interesting. It's interesting, and she's cool and nice. I'm just gonna end up repeating myself over and over again. I just like her. She is S. I don't have words to say more about her. And also the fact that we learn that more stuff involving her in Zero Time Dilemma, that actually doesn't factor into me putting her in S. But if I included it, it's even better. So she's good. Phi. Anyone who watched my playthrough probably has a good idea of how I feel about Phi. She annoyed me a lot of the time. The way she speaks bothered me. The fact that she is a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. She just loves to play the devil's advocate. I'm just saying this is how this could happen, or I'm just saying this information, or and then her, like, telling Sigma that he's being weird or whatever, or not making sense because of the things that he says about how he's like remembering things or whatever, and she is also doing the same thing and not even like acknowledging that. I guess in her head it's just different because it's her perspective and that's the only one that matters. This is what my heart tells me. And it's unfortunate because Fi is a character that I would have wanted to like, because she is more of like, I don't know how to explain it. She's supposed to be like a intelligent and calculating character and kind of cold and blunt, but it just didn't work for me. And this is entirely like, well, maybe not entirely, but a lot of it is personal bias. I really don't like characters that are incredibly hypocritical and contradict themselves and just are being difficult for the sake of being difficult. Yeah, I don't know. Unfortunate, I guess. Mioji, aka Old Junpei. I feel like Old Junpei fell a little bit from original Junpei. So he's not S tier, but I do think he is A tier. Mioji was one of the characters that I actually enjoyed being around and listening to. Yeah, and it's interesting seeing, you know, where Junpei ends up. And I liked seeing, like, his caring for Quark and, you know, learning about how, or I guess learning about, like, his connection with the old woman and it being Akane and stuff like that. I don't know, I just liked him. He was good for me. He was one of the better characters in this game for me. I didn't dislike being around him, so he is A. He is A. And Quark? How do I feel about Quark, actually? Something that is disappointing about Quark is that he is mostly just there. And I think at one point in the game, it's actually explained that, like, the only reason that Quark is there is because Mioji wanted him there. Like, he had no reason for actually being there. He was just there. And that kind of is reflected in the fact that you don't get a whole lot of his story. And I mean, I guess he's a child, so you wouldn't get as much of his story because he is young. He doesn't have as much of a story. But a lot of his story is very tied to Mioji. I do still actually really like Quark, even though I was suspicious of him for a really long time. Children are just suspicious, what can I say? I don't know if he quite belongs here, but I think I'm putting him in A, simply because I looked at these characters and I was like, I like Quark more than these characters. So I think Quark is just A. He can be with his grandpa. They can be together up in this tier. Yeah, it's unfortunate that more wasn't done with him and he was gone. I get they love to have characters that are just like missing for a portion of the game. It's unfortunate that he was gone for a portion of the game. I think if he had more going on for him, he could have been like an S tier character. He's, yeah, I don't know. He's decent. K, who is a character that is technically multiple characters depending on the route that you're taking. K is either Kyle? Is that the correct name? I almost said Kevin. Kyle, I'm pretty sure that's the right name. If I'm wrong, oh my gosh. Or old Akane, if Akane is alive. So it's hard to really place K as a character, because he is like technically multiple characters bundled into one. I think that he was a pretty decent character. Some of the things that he said like made sense. Some of the ways that he went about it didn't make sense. I think that he could go an A, but I think for me he is more of a B. He'd be like high tier B. Do I put him? You know what? If I'm going by the same logic that I put Quark in A by saying I like him more than the characters here, I think I have to put K in A. So yeah, A. Changed my mind. He is an A now. Oh god. Dio. I have complex feelings about Dio. He is a character that I thought that I would like really enjoy. I saw him and I was like, he looks like S tier material. I do not think he is S tier. I did like his personality and the fact, like, just how he carries himself throughout the game is good. I like that he's just kind of a dick. The fact that he's a part of a cult thing was disappointing to me. I think that I'm gonna use the same logic that I did for K and Quark, in that I'm pretty sure I like Dio more than a lot of the characters in B. And for like an antagonist kind of character, I definitely liked him more than Ace. Like, Ace is a well-written character, but he's not, like, my kind of antagonist or the kind of antagonist that I like. I like the antagonist to have, like, lots of charisma and charm to them, and I think Dio did have that. He was dumb and stupid, but I really enjoyed his personality. So I think he is A for me. And that all of them are placed. We have a lot down in D, but we also filled up the A column. So kind of balances a bit there. Okay, hold on. I'm inserting this clip after the fact because I just remembered something important about Phi that I did not like in Virtue's Last Reward, and it's very important that I bring it up because I know that she is a character that a lot of people like, and I feel like I need to defend and explain reasons why I feel the way that I do about her. I mentioned that Quark has not as much connection to anything that is happening, but something that Quark does have, he has his connection to Ten Mioji. So he does have, like, something that is relevant to the plot. He is able to give you more information about Ten Mioji and in turn Junpei. Phi, during Virtue's Last Reward, unless I am completely, like, misremembering, has literally nothing. She is just there. She has no connection like all of the other characters do. She's just a person who is there. And I know that in Zero Time Dilemma, she has, like, a connection explained, but during Virtue's Last Reward, she is just there. She's just a random person who has no connection seemingly to anything that is going on. And I don't like that. It kind of goes back into the thing that I talked about where Virtue's Last Reward just seems like a setup to another game. It doesn't have its like own thing for the most part. It can't like be its own contained thing. Like Fi can't be her own contained thing because she's nothing in Virtue's Last Reward. It's upsetting, and I just I needed to insert that. So yeah, back to what I was saying. Yeah, I don't know what else to really say about the characters. I think they were pretty decent. As you can see, there were some that I enjoyed and some that I did not. Out of all of the things that I have discussed for Virtue's Last Reward, I think the characters are the thing that I hold in like a higher regard for this game. Even though they had some issues, I still think that a lot of them were pretty good. Do I have any other points to add about the game? I think this one was definitely the longest game, which is kind of weird considering I mentioned it feels very much like an in-between game. It definitely feels it's something that you can't really play on its own, which again is fine because it's in a series. But it does feel like a setup for another game, and it being so long, I think is a little bit of a detriment to it. I think that there are parts that they could have condensed down, and kind of made the game a little bit more concise and streamlined. Because out of all of the games in the Zero Escape series, this one took me the longest, and that is because it is such a long game. There are so many different paths, and like some of that can't really be helped because like you've added in more paths by adding in the AB voting. There just like has to be that many paths. But yeah, I think the game could have been shorter, and that might have helped it a little bit more. I would have liked to see the visuals have been a bit better. I would have liked to have seen it be more of its own story and less of a setup. Maybe like have some sort of conclusion feeling thing. The gameplay I would have liked to have seen be better in terms of like puzzles. I do like some of the additions that they made. I think that the additions were beneficial to the game, having the voting, having like the different way that the bracelets work and that you're like paired or solo and stuff like that. I think that was cool. That being said, I think it's pretty obvious just based on how I've spoken that I don't think it's as good as 999 was. I did still enjoy it. There were just a lot of things that I would have liked to have seen be better, you know? That's my thoughts on Virtue's Last Reward. I don't think I had anything else that I wanted to add. Yeah, so that's Virtue's Last Reward. All right, and now we are going to talk about the third and final game, Zero Time Dilemma. This one, I mentioned whenever I first finished playing it that it seemed like a game that I definitely needed to like sit and think about it a little bit more, and it definitely was. There is a lot to try and digest in this game, and the way that you play through it does not help in making things clear. So to start out with the story, you have a kind of similar premise where there's a group of people who are trapped. They gotta do puzzles and stuff, but this time the newer element that's added is the decision game, where you make decisions, a lot of which some are like random decisions and others are like morals based decisions, which I actually really like. So to start, you're just everyone's like in a jail or something, and this zero person shows up and is like, you're gonna do a coin toss, and it's very confusing. You don't know what's happening. It just jumps you right into it in the middle. I remember being so confused, feeling like I missed something right at the beginning because I didn't know what was happening. Something that this game unfortunately suffers from is the fact that it did not have the funding and I think probably the time to really refine everything about it. Looking at it, you can see that it had a lot of potential, I think, to be like a really good game, but I heard that it almost wasn't completed. They had to do crowdfunding in order to just like even get enough support to finish making the game, and it did not end up selling a lot, which is really unfortunate, because you can see that they wanted to put a lot of thought and effort into this. And I know that some of it like had to be completely rewritten, and that's why things are confusing or more confusing than they probably should be within the game. But yeah, so to talk about the story, some of it is gonna like delve into gameplay aspects as well, but you have 3 different groups of people, so there's 9 people in total, 3 people per group, and you're jumping between the different groups, playing as either Carlos, Diana, or Q, quote unquote, which I think is a pretty neat concept. It was actually confusing to me at first. I didn't even realize that they were like separated in different groups. Whenever it was like explaining what was going to happen and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, they're all in the same room. That again just comes down to them not having the time or budget to be able to make good enough establishing shots, I guess. And also, I guess that was kind of a hint to myself of the big twist reveal of them all actually being within the same room anyway, just at different points in time. So yeah, I don't even know how to explain the story of this one. Zero explains, Zero the Second, that's what he calls himself, explains that they will go through like a series of puzzles and decisions. So everyone has the bracelet again. This time they will do some sort of decision or puzzle or whatever, and then they will be put to sleep and will have their memories erased. So everything is very disjointed and fragmented, which is how you play the game. You just choose different fragments instead of it being like a coherent flow chart. You're just kind of jumping through things to kind of mimic how the characters would feel all fragmented in how they are experiencing things as well. And so the goal of the characters is to obviously escape, and the way to do that is to have 6 people die, and each time a person dies, there is a password that's revealed, and once you collect 6 of the passwords, you're able to leave. The remaining 3, or remaining however many, are able to leave. And again, similar to 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, throughout the game, you learn that the characters have different connections. For this one, though, it's a little bit different because you have characters who appeared in both 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, because you have Akane, you have Junpei, you have Phi, and you have Sigma. So there are familiar characters that are there, which I think is actually really neat. You get to see, it's like a bit of an all-star cast. You get to see the past characters again. Like, Virtue's Last Reward had Clover, obviously, and Mioji, who was Junpei, but you didn't, like, know that. But this one felt a little bit different. It felt like being with the other characters again, which I thought was pretty cool. And you also have newer characters, so you're not just, you know, stuck with the same old characters. You still have other characters that you get to learn about and grow to like or dislike. Maybe if I focus on the different teams and kind of the stories that they go through, that might be easier. So on Carlos's side, you have Carlos, Akane, and Junpei. So throughout their story, they talk about, like, shifting and being an Esper or whatever, and how Akane believes that Carlos is also that, and that Carlos has a sister who is ill and is probably ill because she has that ability and is just, like, over using it a lot without, like, meaning to or something. You get to learn a bit about what Akane and Junpei have been doing. Akane has been working with her brother. They have a group called, like, Crash Keys or something, and they've been working towards preventing, essentially, Radical 6 from, you know, killing everyone and becoming a thing that spreads. So the reason that Akane is even there is to try and help things. I should probably mention that all these characters were together because they were actually part of the DCOM experiment, which was supposed to be an experiment to see what it would be like to live on Mars with a group of people. If I remember correctly. So that is why the characters are all together. They weren't, like, randomly kidnapped like all the other games. I mean, they were still kind of kidnapped, but they were together for a reason this time. See, even me having been able to, like, sit and think about this game for however long it has been since I finished it, it's still all just, like, fragmented and disjointed, so I'm gonna be all over the place. But yeah, so that's what Akane has been doing. Junpei he started working for, like, a detective firm, and he's been, like, trying to find Akane, and that's why he is there, because he's been tracking her down. He also wants to marry her, even though they aren't even dating. Yeah. Carlos is a firefighter. His sister is sick. That is his story. Now I feel like I'm just talking about the characters instead of the story. In Q team, you have Q, Mira, and Eric. Throughout their story, you learn that Q is actually a boy named Sean, who is no longer a boy. He's actually the consciousness of a boy in a robot body that has a lot of bodies. Yeah. And Mira is actually a serial killer called Heart Ripper who rips out people's hearts. Eric is Eric, and he likes Mira and has had a traumatic past where his mother died, and then his father became all abusive and killed his brother, and then they had to, like, throw his brother's body in a lake or something, so he has trauma. Then you have Diana's team, which has Phi and Sigma. Throughout their story, you learn that Diana is the one that Luna's appearance from VLR is actually based on. And Diana and Sigma end up forming a relationship where they, throughout one of the timelines, end up having twins that they send back in time using a machine that is there. Again, there's a lot that is in this game. And one of those ends up being Phi. So they are just, one big happy family. That is their story. The other twin ends up being Delta, who is Zero, who is working towards, assumedly, from my interpretation, who is working towards creating a scenario where everyone feels empowered and motivated to stop a fanatic who is going to cause the whole Radical Six thing to even happen, or there's an explosion or something that happened. I don't remember, honestly. I don't remember, but a lot of people will die if they don't do anything. In fact, I think everyone will die if they don't do anything, and his goal the whole time was to create a scenario where they experience all of this so that, and then go back to before they would have experienced that, so nobody dies or anything, and then they're able to do stuff. So yeah, story, hard to explain. I definitely forgot a lot of stuff there, but yeah, that's if I remember more, I'll mention it. Oh, and also for story, before I forget about it, there is these files that you actually unlock at the end of the game. This I did not include in my playthrough because I did not know about them. But there are files that you unlock that talk about different things about the game and the characters, and there's little kind of epilogues of what the characters are doing after the game is over, or it has little explanations of the characters' pasts a little bit. So I'll just take a second, because it wasn't included in my playthrough, to talk about those. I'll try and put them on the screen for you to actually look through and read them if you would like. But I'll just kind of give some summaries as to what is explained within these files. So one of the stories is the story that Delta keeps telling over and over about a woman who goes on a jog and encounters a snail, so she takes a different path, and that a man was falsely accused of committing this murder and was executed, and his wife, in grief, killed herself. And right before his arrest, he actually called for a taxi, but since he was arrested and unable to take the taxi, someone else took it, who happened to be a surgeon on his way to perform a surgery on a young boy. However, the taxi ended up getting into an accident. The surgeon was not able to make it to the hospital for this surgery, and therefore the young boy also ended up dying because the surgery was a life-saving one that he was not able to get. Another of the files has Diana and Sigma speaking with each other. This time it is the young version of Sigma instead of the old version of Sigma, who you see in Zero Time Dilemma. This version of Sigma is the one that will be in Virtue's Last Reward, and it talks about how he went to the headquarters of Crash Keys to get artificial arms, and I think an eye as well. So this is the timeline where Virtue's last reward will be happening. In these files, it's shown that Diana is sick and that Diana and Sigma are currently on the moon and have been together for 3 years at this point. And as Diana is sick to the point where you can tell that she is dying, she tells Sigma that it's kind of okay because he in the future will go back in time and see her again. Another of the files clarifies what happened with Phi. So originally she and Delta were sent back to 1904, but Phi was actually again transported to 2008. But there was still another Phi that remained in that timeline because the machines don't actually just send you, it's more like a copy is sent. And it explains that the Phi that remained became a scientist that worked at a research facility and lived into her hundreds. And since Phi, the Phi that we know, mentions being raised by some researchers, you can kind of assume by this that she was actually raised by an old version of herself, which is kind of neat and funny. And in a file featuring Carlos, we see that his sister Maria is alive and well and up and is currently in some sort of rehab or rehabilitation and is recovering from the illness that she was suffering from. It mentions Akane and Junpei and how assumedly they would still be connected to each other, them and Carlos, and how now they know how to treat reverie syndrome, which is what Maria was suffering from. As Carlos and Maria talk, they also mention that, going to Akane and Junpei's wedding. And Carlos thinks to himself that he still has one thing to do. It mentions them all trying to track down the terrorists that will cause all of humanity to die out. In a file featuring Akane and Junpei, Junpei is somewhere within the Crash Keys headquarters or something and is writing a letter when suddenly Akane appears there. Junpei tries to hide the letter that he's writing, but Akane takes it and sees that it is something that's addressed to Carlos, thanking him, and she asks if it's an invitation to the wedding, to which Junpei says no. He says it's a progress report and that he mentioned the wedding, but he also made a promise to Akane and her brother that they wouldn't get married until they've dealt with the terrorist fanatic person. Junpei brings up that there's another history where he is trying to find Akane even when he's all old, and Akane teases him and says that he's changed a lot. They start play fighting and laughing, and everything is good. The next file features Sean, Eric, and Mira. So you see that Eric and Sean are visiting Mira, who is in prison. And you can see that both Eric and Mira have wedding rings on. So they are married. As Mira talks to the surprise guest Sean that Eric's brought along with him, you can see a hint that she is actually, I don't know if the word is recovering, but her emotions are a bit more genuine now. She smiles, and it's noted that it is an actual genuine smile. It's mentioned that Mira turned herself in and that Eric was the one that convinced her to do so, and that they were actually married in jail. Mira talks about how she killed Eric in a different timeline and asks if he's really okay with that. And he says that he forgives her and that she hasn't killed him yet. And she repeats yet back to him. Sean starts talking about all the victims that Mira has claimed and how they probably wouldn't forgive her. And that even though there's nothing that she could do for what she has already done in this timeline, that maybe in another history she could help to repair the damage that she has caused. Sean then proceeds to break Mira out and takes down some guards that come to try and stop them. And Sean then drags them along, saying that he knows where the transporter is and that she can go back and stop the young Mira in a different timeline to quote-unquote clear her sins. So yeah, those were the added files that you unlock after the game. Just wanted to include those. I think they're pretty neat. They actually answered quite a few of the questions that I had at the end, so they are nice to have. Something that I want to point out for the story that Zero brings up a lot is that it is actually talking about a lot of people connected with the characters in the game. So the woman who is jogging is said to be a mother, and you can assume that the mother it is talking about is actually Eric's mother. And the girl who killed her is actually Mira. That was her first victim. Which makes a lot more sense as to why the woman was like, you should smile and I forgive you, if that was Eric's mother. The man who was falsely accused was actually Akane's father, and the woman that committed suicide because of it was Akane's mother. The surgeon who died in an accident I don't think is related to anyone, but the person that they were going to, give life-saving surgery to was Sean, the boy who was in the hospital who ended up dying. So I think that that's really cool. The game actually does have a lot of neat little connecting things, which I really enjoy. Gameplay. So gameplay for this game. I mentioned that the way that you play through this game is a bit different than 999 and Virtue's Last Reward. You do still have a flowchart that you can look at, but the way that you choose what you're doing next is more fragmented. So you can swap between the different teams however you like, but you're basically choosing a specific fragment in time to jump to, and you aren't always able to go in the proper flow of things. In fact, a majority of the time you can't go in the proper flow of things, so you're jumping all over the place. When I started playing the game, was very confused by this. I didn't know if there was a proper way that I should be playing, which, I assume that there isn't a specific way that you need to be playing it, but I think the way that I ended up doing it, where I stuck with a single team and did all their fragments and then went to a different team, did all their fragments, and then another team and did all their fragments, worked out well enough. It felt less confusing, I think, than it would have if I was just jumping all over the place between different teams. But yeah, I do wish that if they had worked on the game a little bit more, that they could have made things a little bit more clear from the player's perspective of things. I do enjoy that they set it up that way because it reflects how the characters would be feeling, jumping all over the place and not knowing where they are, because their memories get wiped between each room that they do. But I think they needed a little bit more to kind of go a bit easier on the player in order for them to understand and not feel like they're playing the game wrong. And of course you still have the puzzle rooms, which are pretty much the same as the others. In terms of difficulty for the puzzles, even though this is the most recent game that I played, I actually don't remember a lot of the puzzles. I know some of them were difficult, but I don't think that they were the level of difficult as the level of difficulty that Virtue's Last Reward presented. But I don't think they were as straightforward or easy as 999 was either. I think this one also suffered a little bit from puzzles being kind of confusing. There were some where you had to do actions and the outcome was random, but there's no way to know that the outcome is random. So I can imagine scenarios where people are, say, rolling dice and getting a certain outcome and feeling like that is the only outcome and then not going back to it, when you're actually supposed to do it over and over again until you get a specific outcome. I do not know how they could have made this clearer, but I think they needed to, because I like the concept of it, but it just adds to the confusion of the game in practice, I feel. And then the newer aspect of the gameplay side of things is how you have the decision game now. So some of the rooms, instead of being puzzles, and even in some of the rooms that are puzzle rooms, you will end things with a decision that the character that you're playing as has to make. These can be, you know, the choice between pushing a button or not pushing a button, or even like having to type in a name or say something specifically to answer a character's question or something. These I actually really enjoy. I like the ability to make decisions in the game. I think it was a welcome addition, and I also think it lends well to one of the ideas of the game, which is that Delta, who is Zero, has the ability to mind hack people, which sounds silly and dumb. He can read their minds and control them. And in some of the situations when characters are making decisions and you as the player have them make like a bad decision that they probably wouldn't make, the characters are like, oh my gosh, wait, no, I didn't do that. This, I believe, is supposed to be Delta forcing them to make an incorrect decision. So I think that is neat. Other than that, it's pretty standard gameplay from what I remember. Some of it was confusing. I'm chalking that up to the fact that they weren't able to put the amount of care and love into it as they would have liked to. And yeah. Now we'll talk about the visuals. The visuals in Zero Time Dilemma I feel like are a step up from Virtue's Last Reward, but I don't think that they were quite at the level that 999 set. They got better at 3D models. The 3D models themselves are a little bit more generic. I think I would have liked to have seen a better mix of like being a better, more detailed model and also having the kind of like, I don't know, the ones in Virtue's Last Reward still had like an almost like cartoonish, they were more identifiable than the ones in Zero Time Dilemma. Some of the characters I didn't even recognize. When Akane and Junpei showed up, I was like, who are they? I was able to recognize Fly, but I was like, who is that? Sigma kind of looks, you know, like Sigma, but different. It was confusing, especially when you should be able to recognize the characters that you have seen in past games. So I think they maybe went a little bit too much with changing how characters looked. I think they should have tried to make them look more recognizable to the faces that we would actually recognize from the other games. For the scenery and setting of the place, it does suffer a bit like Virtue's Last Reward did, in that it feels like a bit of a concrete prison. But I think it does do a little bit better to add a bit more style and kind of things around. Like, some of the rooms do look neat and are cool. Again, it's not Titanic replica levels of cool and interesting, but I do think it is a step up. I'll also put this in the visuals section. The animated segments, while I do commend them for actually putting in like more animated segments and actually utilizing the 3D models like they should have in Virtue's Last Reward, again, because the game was not what it was supposed to be, they were not able to refine the animations or make them more clear. Some of them were very confusing. There were like shots missing, and it was kind of like the game. It felt fragmented, and I didn't understand the kind of composition of like what was happening. Like I mentioned before, I thought that they were all within the same room because of how like the camera angles were and the fact that the rooms look similar. I just assumed they were in the same room, and there were parts that were confusing, like Eric would be after Sean for 1 second and then suddenly be like slammed against a door, and you're like, what happened? It didn't even show someone hitting him. Like, what happened here? And there's the notorious clip of Eric just like standing still in a marching pose, looking over his shoulder, saying something, I don't even remember what, but like the animated portions were not great, but I do commend them for actually trying this time. And this kind of goes into gameplay as well, but this time, instead of having, you know, text that you as the player are advancing through by pressing a button, it is just like, a lot of it is like watching a show. It's voice acted, and there's like subtitles on the screen, and it just automatically advances for you, which took me a bit to get used to, but I did actually enjoy it. I would have liked, just because of how I play through games, I would have liked to have been able to advance through the dialogue on my own, but I know that that wouldn't have lended itself well to, you know, actually having the animated segments that are there, so I can deal with that. Now we will talk about the characters. First we have Gab. S. I don't think I need to explain that one. Gab is the most well-written character within the game, and I think within the entire series. They're my favorite character out of the whole thing, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Yeah. Carlos. Carlos bothers me. In similar ways to how I've explained reasons that Phi bothers me, and also a bit of how Quark bothers me. did he even need to be there? Did he even need to be there? I know there is one timeline where he rescues Akane and Junpei. Like, he comes back and rescues them. But other than that, did anything that he did serve any purpose? He is not connected to any of the things that happen. Like, Carlos, he mentions his sister and how he wants money to help her, but his sister ends up being like a throwaway character. She has nothing to do with anything that is happening. So literally everything about his character doesn't matter. And at the beginning, he's told that, like, he's the one who will make the decision and stuff. And I know at the end of the game, he's the one, like, holding the gun to decide whether or not to shoot Delta or whatever. But literally, he does nothing. He could be removed from the game, and I think it would be, like, the same for the most part. There would be some things that would be a bit different, but for the most part, he didn't need to be there. He was just so generic and boring and didn't do anything, and I think I'm putting him in D. I would love to put him in C for Carlos, but I think he's D, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. He's just someone that has no connection to anything. He has no relevance. I don't get it. Akane in this one. I remember having quite a few problems with Akane, and a lot of it comes down to, like, with how she was written. I didn't like a lot of the things. She would have knowledge and stuff, and then, like, pass out or be knocked out and unable to pass along the knowledge. It would talk about how she's an intelligent person and stuff, and then she would go and do things that didn't really fit with the character that they were trying to say that she was. She's definitely not as good as 999's. I'm gonna put her in C. I wasn't a huge fan of her in this one. Junpei, also unfortunately going through his little emo phase, was not as good as original Junpei or old man Junpei. I do think he was better than Akane in this one, so I think I'm putting him in B. I don't know, I just don't like sulking Junpei, I guess. He's just not as great to me when he is all down. There are moments when he, like, did show a bit of the old side of him, where he's, like, energetic and, like, charismatic and stuff, which I liked. So he didn't fall, like, as far as he could have, but he still was not as good as the other versions of himself. He had a little dip there. He started out good, he went down a bit, and then as he got older, he started to get better again. Sean. I think that Sean's actually a pretty decent character. I like the story that they kind of go through, that they used to be an actual boy named Sean, and now they're just, like, the consciousness that lives in a quantum computer, that is sent to the different bodies. And I like that there's the connection with Zero, Zero being Delta, who is an old man who is also in the hospital for, I actually don't remember the reason, but he would, you know, talk with the young boy Sean and stuff, and he actually helped, like, set everything up so that Sean would be able to continue on living, or at least his consciousness could continue on living in these, like, robot bodies. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's a decent character. He wasn't, like, my favorite character, but I think he's, like, A. He's not, like, mid-tier. I think he's decent. and fairly well written, I think. There's nothing that I can think of off the top of my head that I didn't like about him. So yeah. A. Mira. Mira, I kind of have complicated feelings on. I actually really enjoyed Mira. I thought it was fun how a lot of the times she would like to sit back and kind of just see how things played out. Like, I'm just interested in seeing what you'll do. I thought that kind of like playful side of her was fun. She is a serial killer. I do not like the whole doesn't have emotions thing. I thought it was a little bit weird, but honestly, I still enjoyed Mira. I don't know. I don't know. Like, in terms of kind of like antagonistic characters, if I were to compare her to Dio, I think I would put them on the same level for me. Just because, I don't know, she was interesting to me up until the, like, non-emotion part. And the idea of, like, in the after-game files, how she's, like, you know, she's turned herself in and she's assumedly, like, sought help with things, so she's learning to kind of feel emotion and process emotion, and is then assumedly going to try and, like, prevent her younger self from doing the things that she did, I think is actually pretty cool. So I think I'm gonna put her in A as well. Eric. Eric is Eric. Again, another character that I have very complex feelings about. He bothered me throughout a lot of the game. But I actually do think that he's probably one of the, like, better written characters in this game. This one is tough. I feel like, here's my thoughts so far. I feel like I don't think he is D tier. I think he is well written enough that he doesn't deserve to be put in D tier. It's between B and C for me, because I don't think he's A. I think he bothered me enough that I can't feasibly put him in A. I think I need to compare him to the characters within these tiers. Like, do I feel the same about him as I did, like, Lotus? Lotus bothered me a lot and then had, like, good points to her. Does he bother me as much as, like, these characters? Do I think he's on the same level as these characters? Oof. The thing about Eric is that I see someone with the potential to be a better person and that he just needs to work towards that. And I'm trying to separate that from, like, how I'm placing him. Do I feel like he's on the same level as Emo Phase Junpei? Maybe that's what I need to look at. Did I enjoy him more than Akane in this one? You know what? He did a lot of bad things. He showed moments of growth and the potential for growth. Even if you look at the, like, after game files, he encouraged Mira to, like, turn herself in and stuff. He's still naive. He's still, like, married her, which is weird. This feels so weird, but I think I'm putting him in B. I think I'm putting him in B. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's there. I think that's where he's gonna be. I'm just gonna move on so I don't I don't think about him more. Diana. So Diana is the one that Luna was based on, and I have Luna in S. Do I think that Diana is on the same level as Luna? Let me think about that for a second. Do I like Diana more than these characters? I think so. You know, I think Diana should be with her Golem counterpart up in S tier. I did enjoy Diana. I could make the argument that she could be like in A as well. I think she'd be like lower tier S, but I'm still gonna put her in S because I did really like her, and I think out of all the characters in this game, she was probably like the one that I liked most out of all the characters. So I think she belongs up there. And sorry, hold on. After Gab is the best character. We all know that. But the best human character, Diana. Now, we're back with Fi, who now at least has connection to some of the characters that are in this story. She still bothered me, I think, about the same amount as she did in VLR. There wasn't as much time with her in this game. For her to like have the time to bother me so much as she did in VLR. I still unfortunately did not reach a point where I enjoyed her. She had like one moment where she was with Diana, and I thought that was like sweet. But again, she was still doing things that were like just kind of taking the opposite stance for the sake of taking the opposite stance. Like, I think about two things that bothered me with her when playing this game. That was when they were experiencing symptoms that made it seem like they were poisoned, and they're given these vials from another team that say to like take it and that it'll help them, and she is like, but what if this is like not the cure and it's like poison and we'll be double poisoned? And I'm like, then you'll be double poisoned and it doesn't matter. I don't think there's any losing there unless you go with the weird thought that Diana has that like, this is just a pain drug that we're on. It's just to make us feel like... It didn't make sense to me. You either are dying of poison or you are double dying of poison. I didn't get that. There was also the moment where Diana did the whole thing where, you know, Sigma's stuck in a chair and they're told that she needs to pull the trigger to have like the trigger sound go off and like Fi will be released from the incinerator. Diana pulls the trigger and it kills Sigma, and Fi is like, you monster, or whatever, and I'm like, stop, shut up. I think she's better than she was in VLR for me, but I still was not a fan of her. I like that she had she actually like has a story now. You know where she came from. She still kind of feels like a character that is less involved with the things that are going on and more so connected to characters that are involved with what's going on. So she's kind of like strung along with this. But yeah, she at least has a story this time. So she goes up a bit for me. Sigma, old man Sigma and young man Sigma body, I think is better than young Sigma in old man Sigma body. I think that he is A. I don't think he's quite S. Is he an S? He didn't bother me at all. At least nothing that I can remember. No, I think he's A. I think he's just like a decent guy in this one. I enjoyed him. He is decent. He's better than the young consciousness version of himself. He has clearly grown. Yeah, I think he's good. He's A. This guy, Delta, the one who came out of nowhere. I do really wish that they were able to put in a bit more that kind of foreshadowed his appearance. I actually do have, like, I think I have, like, things written down of some of the appearances that he does make. Like, Eric at one point mentions the chair-bound old man. That does actually happen. And I was actually like, what is he talking about? And that was in reference to Delta, who is known as Q. There's also another moment where Q team is able to leave, and Sean ends up running back being like, we've forgotten someone. And it shows Gab tied up with a chain to a post, but it also shows that the chain continues from the post. Like, it's not tied to the post, it's wrapped around it, and there's another end that extends off somewhere. And you can actually, like, see it extending off into the distance towards the end of that scene. And as it zooms out, you actually see a bit of a shadow towards the end of the chain. And I'm pretty sure that's supposed to indicate that Q is actually at the other end of that chain. So it's Q on one end of the chain, wrapped around the pole, and then also attached to Gab. Which I think that's cool. I just think they needed to put a little bit more into getting this to, like, work for a reveal. I do like that they had different elements where you see that he is actually there, and there are different things that foreshadow it. I just think that they needed to do a little bit more for it, and I think that could have been done with, like, I mentioned how, like, the camera angles and stuff were kind of confusing in showing, like, what is happening. I think they could have done a little bit more there if they had the time and money to, you know, put more effort into, like, the visuals side of things. They could have maybe foreshadowed things more there. They could have had the camera angles be, like, incredibly specific, where it's, like, never showing a specific corner. They could have had more shadows show up. They could have had more references to there being someone else there that you don't see. Yeah. For Delta himself, I feel like Delta is actually the character that I, after playing 999, was wanting Akane to be more like. Obviously not to the extent that he is at. Like, Akane still has, like, her own personality, but the mentality that Delta seems to have, where he's setting everything up to try and, you know, make it so that no one gets hurt, but that the future is secured. Like, it's leading towards the best future. I enjoyed that. It also connects him into, like, that religion thing, the free the soul stuff, which I don't know. I think he needed more work put into him. But from the glimpses that I did see of his character, I think he did have potential to be a very interesting character. I think that I'm actually going to put him in B because I don't know if he's bad. I don't know if he's good. I think he is just mid-tier. B. Yeah. These are my feelings on the characters. I don't know. But there's probably some here that are controversial, but these are just my feelings. These are how I feel about the characters. And, you know, if I rated someone that you really like low, that's not an indicator that, you know, your feelings about that character are invalid, or I'm trying to say that, like, it's not a personal attack against you. And if I rate a character highly that you feel is bad, like, that's not... Opinions on characters are just that. They are opinions. And just like how everyone will feel different about different people in real life, people will feel differently about characters based on their own perspective and their own, like, life that they have lived and the things that they like and dislike in terms of, like, characteristics in people. So, yeah. These are my opinions. You can let me know what your opinions of the different characters were as well. Yeah, do I have anything else to add about Zero Time Dilemma? Let me actually check my sheet that has some of the notes that I wrote down about this game. Okay, I think the only things that I have written down that I didn't mention already are the fact that I'm pretty sure it's theorized that the tombstone that is in the bee garden of VLR is actually Diana's tombstone. I don't know if that's a confirmed thing or if that's, like, actually true. I did write down a bunch of different questions after playing the game, and a lot of them were answered in the, like, epilogue files. One of the questions that is not answered is who the terrorist fanatic person is, that is mentioned at the end of the game, who will cause, like, all of humanity to die out. But yeah, one of the things, as much as this game, like, it clearly suffered from the fact that they weren't able to do as much with it as they wanted to, I think it had a lot of potential to it. It had a lot of points that, you know, I really enjoy in a game. It had a lot of foreshadowing. It had a lot of little small details, like the whole story that Zero slowly tells about, like, the snail and the woman jogging, and how, like, all the characters in that are kind of connected to the different characters here. I think that's really cool. I think all the different, like, little pieces that you can pick up on in the story are just super good. And I would have loved to have lived in a timeline where they were able to give this game the love that it deserved, because I think that would have been a really great game, honestly. While it is not perfect, I think that it's actually, like, a guilty pleasure, one of my favorite games, just because of, like, after I finished 999 and after I finished VLR, I spent a little bit of time thinking about them, but it wasn't to any, like, big degree or, like, long time. I wasn't writing a bunch of stuff down. With Zero Time Dilemma, after I finished the game, I said that I, like, wrote down questions that I had. I, like, looked into different, like, pieces, like, things that I could have missed and stuff like that. I spent a lot of time thinking about this one. And for me, a lot of the enjoyment that I get out of games is being able to, like, think a lot about the games. I like games that really make me think and, like, look back on things. And I feel like out of all the games, Zero Time Dilemma is one that, you know, you get the most out of looking back on it. And you almost kind of have to look back on it in order to understand what has happened. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this game. And I think that I said at the beginning of playing the game that I had heard that it was like a divisive game. Like a lot of people hate it or like it. And that the fact that it was divisive was really interesting to me because I tend to like the games that other people tend to be very like passionately against. And I think I actually ended up being in the camp of like, this is a game that I like. I do not think that it is as good as 999, and I'm actually torn between whether or not I like it more than VLR. I do think VLR is the better made game for sure. But also, like I said, Zero Time Dilemma is kind of like a guilty pleasure thing for me. There are some things that I enjoy despite there being things that should make me dislike it quite a lot, that I still just like it. I don't know. I think that Zero Time Dilemma and VLR are almost tied for me. And if I were to lean into my guilty pleasure side, that I would probably rate it higher than Virtue's Last Reward, which is kind of crazy because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people really like Virtue's Last Reward, and some people like rate it as like their top game out of the series. And if it's not that, it's usually 999. But yeah, now do I have anything that I want to say about like this series as a whole? I know that I asked people for questions. I don't think I got very many questions. I know that one of the ones that I got from Urban was where I would like to see the series go from here. Hold on, let me actually bring up the questions so that I'm not just making it up. Let me see. Okay, yes, Urban actually had two questions for me. One was about Zero Time Dilemma and whether or not I thought the game had challenging puzzles or it was the easiest one. I think some of them were challenging. I would label it as like mid-tier in terms of challenging. 999 being the most like straightforward, I think, to get through, and then it would be Zero Time Dilemma, and then the hardest being Virtue's Last Reward. But the question that I was talking about was, if it was up to you, what direction would the series head to next? That is an incredibly difficult question. They obviously left it open to having there be more story that comes after. Knowing the difficulty that was involved in getting this game to just even be finished, I unfortunately do not see the series continuing at all, which is pretty unfortunate. In terms of like the current storyline that is being told within the series, I don't know if there's anything more that I would want to see. Like I mentioned the questions that I had, and there was only really like one that wasn't answered, and that was who the terrorist fanatic was. They definitely do have room to create something else, but I don't know how well it would turn out. It would essentially just be a piece to tie up the series and like finish it. For me personally, what I would like to see happen with this series, which I think might already, kind of be happening anyways, is not to see a continuation of the story that is being told within the 3 games, but to instead see the core elements of the series be carried forward to a different game or a different game series that is completely separate from the world of, the Zero Escape series. So you would carry forward the, puzzle room elements. You would carry forward the idea of a group of people being trapped within a place and having to, do puzzles. You don't necessarily need all the, kind of, I don't know what you would call them, supernatural elements of people being espers and stuff like that. You could base it in reality if you wanted to. You could take some of that forward or not. I would just like to see a different story told that kind of follows the same formula. Not really formula, I guess. Just has some of the same elements. I know that the creator of this game series is making other games now. So some of that may kind of be moving forward into other games. I don't think there's anything that's quite has this exact structure. I think the closest one that I know of is, I almost called it Death March Club. That was the original name for it. World's End Club, which I have not played. From what I gather, the beginning of it anyways follows a kind of similar idea where a group of kids are trapped in a place. And I think there are puzzles and stuff. I don't actually know a lot about that one, but that would probably be the closest to this series that the creator of these games has worked on. I know that he also made what's it called? I, the Somnium Files, which is a game that I actually want to play. I actually don't know anything about that game, but I don't think it follows the same puzzle room formula as these games. But yeah, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see something different that kind of has the same gameplay style, improved upon, of course. Yeah, a continuation of this storyline I feel would be too much and also just would not happen unless there's a huge resurgence of people really liking the Zero Escape series, kind of similar to how a ton of people fairly recently jumped on the Danganronpa series to where it became it blew up suddenly. Unless that happens with this series, which I unfortunately don't see it happening, then I don't think any more will come of it, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that was all really the questions that I received. In terms of my overall feelings about this series, I have really enjoyed it. It has certainly been a wild ride throughout all of it. The ending probably could have used a little bit more, but that doesn't really hinder the rest of both Zero Time Dilemma and the series itself. I did mention that a lot of the characters are kind of almost stuck in what they are able to do. The series is very, I almost want to say rigid in what they are able to do, because a lot of characters have their whole pasts and futures planned out for them, and things need to happen in a very specific way, and that kind of gives less freedom for them to really, do more with the series after this. But I think for the series itself, having it be like this own contained thing that kind of just like loops back around and is all connected with each other is kind of cool. And man, I really don't know what else to add to this one after having to like talked about the different games on their own. I think this is just a really solid series, and it is probably one of my favorites now. In terms of like ranking the games, I kind of already said, but 999 is my favorite out of the series. Virtue's Last Reward and Zero Time Dilemma are kind of tied for me. Depending on my mood, they could be in either order, I think. Yeah, I guess that's it. I want to apologize for how long this video took to make and come out. I think I originally said, like, when the last episode of Zero Time Dilemma came out, that it would be, like, within 2 weeks. It took longer than that. Life gets in the way, you become busy, you have problems with your computer, and stuff happens. I also would have liked to have done like a stream of this. That would have been fun to like talk and discuss with you guys. But the computer issues, I felt like it would be better to just record. That being said though, if you have anything that you want to discuss within the comments based on the things that I have said or your own opinions about the whole game series as a whole, feel free to leave comments. I will try and engage with you, and you know, we can have like little discussions down there if you're wanting to talk about things. You can let me know how bad my character opinions are, and I will let you know how bad your character opinions are. No. We can talk about the different things that we liked and disliked in a civilized way and respectful way. And yeah, that's it. This is it. That's the final thoughts. They're all here. They're all out. I'll definitely finish recording this and then remember things that I didn't mention, but it's okay. It's okay. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys in the next series that I do. And we'll go along for another ride through a story, and it will be a fun time. Thoroughly enjoyed this series, and I'm so happy to have been able to experience it alongside you guys. It has just been great, and thank you all for watching. And if you made it to the end, I think this video is going to be long. If you made it all the way to the end, congratulations. You are amazing and a great person. Thank you. And I hope you all have an amazing day and month and week and year and lifetime. Take care, everyone, and goodbye. I will see you in the next one.